Chris Fowler is the voice of college football. There's no question about it. And he joins me here on the Rich Eisen Show from Clemson, South Carolina. We'll be calling Louisville and Clemson on ABC at 8 Eastern Time Saturday night. How are you, Chris?
Great to be with you, Richard. The sun is shining. The previous visits here have been hurricanes, flood, mud, terrible weather, but it's a beautiful fall day, and looking forward to tomorrow night.
Man, am I looking forward to that, too. You know, whenever you've got two special quarterbacks in a game, you know, they go against each other, but they really don't. Obviously, they're going against the other's defenses. How do you see this playing out, Chris?
Well, two excellent defenses against those quarterbacks. I mean, Louisville is a complete team. They're not just Lamar Jackson. And I think that Clemson obviously has a ton of talent on defense. And the last 2 years, the games have been super defensive. It's been basically a hopeless situation on third down. And so, you know, I think they'll be much better offensively this year, but I think that, you know, the defensive guys are extremely motivated about you know, all the hype coming into this game.
So you're saying the defensive is taking it essentially personal, that we're not talking about them?
I think so. I mean, you got Lamar Jackson, who's played 4 games on the cover of Sports Illustrated. So I showed some of the Clemson guys that cover. They took great interest in that. Deshaun Watson's been on the cover a few times last year. But, you know, I think that, you know, Lamar Jackson, and I think it's the nature of our culture, you know, to be fascinated with the sensational of the moment. And listen, I called the game at Florida State. He made those guys look terrible, but it's still a very small sample of work that we have to go on. And I think that, you know, the Clemson guys have certainly taken note, and they'd say, well, he hadn't done that against us, and let him prove it a little bit more. And let's see how he responds when he faces true adversity. And when things aren't easy, you're not getting 9 yards of play and scoring 6 touchdowns a game. And I think that, you know, that's what's great about this sport, though, is that the guys are constantly learning and growing. You get to see how they pass those tests and how they respond to new challenges. And that's going to be really interesting to see, because the dude is a sensational athlete, the combination of suddenness and slipperiness and strength, and he can throw the ball on a dime, and he's super accurate. You know, I think he's still learning the quarterback position, so there's an excitement of watching how he performs. But there's also some questions that haven't been answered yet that makes it tomorrow night fun.
So what are the questions that you think need answering when it comes to him?
Adversity, just dealing with lack of success over a period of time against the best defense that he's seen. The Seminoles have great athletes, but they were discombobulated on defense, disorganized, had busts right away. They got behind, and I think Louisville just had their way. I don't expect that to happen with Clemson's defense. He may be that good that he can still generate, you know, 150 yards rushing against them and 250 passing, but it's a test that hasn't yet been passed, and it's on the road, and the crowd will be electric and tough. And he's still a guy that is getting by on instinct and ability while he's learning to play quarterback. He's making the wrong decisions on zone reads, but it doesn't matter. He's just too quick for the other guy. And I think that there's a premium on decision-making and poise and taking care of the ball when you're in an environment like this against a team this good. They've turned the ball over a bunch. They have negative turnover ratio a little, but it doesn't matter because they're just gaining huge chunks of yardage. It might matter in a game like this against a better defense, but you know, the public has made Louisville the favorite after Vegas set Clemson the favorite. And, you know, it's going to be interesting to see. I think it's a very close game, but Clemson's not easy to beat in here, that's for sure.
Chris Fowler joining me here prior to calling Louisville Clemson on ABC, joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show. And I guess people are wondering, why isn't Clemson on offense looking like Louisville's been looking on offense? Like, what have you been able to glean from just being there and what you're hearing about the Deshaun Watson-led offense for Clemson coming to this game?
Yeah, I talked to him today and his teammates as well. I think that they feel like it hasn't yet clicked. They've dropped a bunch of balls. Deshaun's accuracy has not been as good as it was last year for whatever reason. He's overthrown some balls. You know, they've not been able to have their way with the running game yet, which sets up a lot of their passing game. Things haven't clicked. They didn't really click early last year either, if you recall. And Clemson, as an offense, really got going from midseason on, and they're all expecting that to happen. And maybe beginning tomorrow night. But, you know, Deshaun's added about 10 pounds. He's stronger. There's nothing really wrong with his game. He's as prepared as ever. I don't think he's let the success go to his head. I think he's still grounded. He still does credible preparation. I just think it hasn't quite clicked yet by their own high standards. It's not bad. But they have to play better on offense, and I think they'll develop. Louisville is a hectic, chaotic defense, unconventional, aggressive. They come right after you, and it's going to be there's not challenges for the Clemson offense either. I mentioned the challenges for Jackson. Watson has some serious challenges too, dealing with what Louisville throws at you, all the blitzes and the pressures, and they are loaded with talented players on that side of the ball too. So Deshaun will have to play his best game.
So you just came from Pasadena last week, calling Stanford and UCLA. How good is Stanford? I mean, national championship good, Stanford?
Boy, it's a tough thing. I mean, can I tell you after tonight, they got to go to Seattle and play Washington.
Sure.
And Washington's actually a slight favorite in that game. I think that Stanford is so incredibly sound, and Shaw has such a system in place, and boring words like the process and all those things that they employ to get guys to take it one play and one game at a time. They play such a different kind of football than we're used to seeing for the most part in college football. They can win with 50, 60 plays, methodical. Every play counts. They execute well. They're tough to move the ball on defense. They're sound. But I think handling that in Seattle. What I love, when you deal with the NFL, the short weeks, right? That's always a component in the game.
Sure.
Stanford played a brutally physical game against UCLA. They beat each other up way more than people who don't appreciate Pac-12 football can understand. Physical game, but Huskies had to play a road game that went to overtime down in Arizona, then fly home. This is a rough assignment for college kids on the short week. It really is. It's arguably one of the Pac-12 games of the year. You know how TV works. Those bad guys in TV move games around so they can be put on national TV, and that's kind of what happened here. It's a challenge both teams got to deal with. If Stanford gets through this game, there's still a whole bunch more tests. I don't think they're a great bet to make the playoffs because I think it's just too much of a gauntlet. I think that's kind of the case for most teams in the Pac-12. But if they come out of there with a win, I'll be very, very impressed.
Yeah, we were talking about it earlier this hour, Chris, that McCaffrey didn't put up the gaudy, 800 all-purpose yards, 9-touchdown game. He had 138 yards rushing, but he ran a lot between the tackles, and it was clear that Mora's game plan was beating the crap out of him and see how he could handle it over 4 quarters. And that might have been the most impressive game I've ever seen him play, just in that respect alone. And then we talk about the Heisman race, and it just drives me nuts when I hear, well, he plays on the West Coast. Shouldn't it be the Heisman? If you have a Heisman vote, shouldn't it behoove you to watch West Coast football and stay up late so your vote is well informed?
Of course. I think with more and more technology and more ways to get access, you don't have to stay up late. You can watch the game on any number of streaming services and get the highlights and be up to speed. And I think more voters are. I don't know how much of a West Coast bias there is, to be honest. I mean, I know people out there like to talk about it, and that's their only explanation for why McCaffrey didn't win over Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry was a pretty good player. Now, he was a freak of nature as well. It was a pretty close race. The power of Alabama certainly carries a lot of weight in the fact that they were in the playoff hunt. But Stanford's early loss kind of put Christian on the back burner. But I think people understand how good he is. I mean, if you don't, you're just ignorant. Iowa players showed up at the Rose Bowl and mouthed off a little bit. We don't really know much about him. We haven't heard much about him. He gave him a lesson in the first quarter. Anybody that shows up to play Stanford that doesn't have full respect for him is an idiot.
So what'd you make of the Les Miles firing, Chris?
Unfortunate. I mean, early. I just feel like, LSU did it in a cynical way, I think, to sort of get an inside track on the top candidates for that job. And you have to do what you have to do. It's just business. I'm not. When I say cynical, I just mean that that was the reason for it. And I think that Les's antics and the colorful aspects of his personality. I think people are going to focus on that, the clock mismanagement, and not focus on the achievements. And he set a pretty high bar there. I'm going to be very interested to see if the next guy they hire, and they'll go after Tom Herman and they'll go after Jimbo Fisher. Those are the big names. Everybody knows that. And those guys are both at different stages of their careers, but both highly thought of. But I'm going to be interested to see where LSU goes from here in terms of consistent performance over time in a really rugged division, and see if the new coach brings in has a better winning percentage than Miles did. I'm also curious to see where he goes next because I think he still wants to coach and would get opportunities. I don't know what would be the best fit for him, but I think we need characters in this sport, man. They're either retiring or being fired.
Yeah.
You want there to be a few coaches who are a little bit different, or a little off, who are fun to cover and be around, right? That's why we enjoy it.
Well, I always expect.
Are there still characters in the NFL? Aren't the number of coaches in the NFL who are characters dwindling?
Yeah, well, I mean, Rex, barged into a conference call that the Bills were having with Julian Edelman and asked a question. He had fun in that respect. But
there aren't very many, are there anymore?
No, that's true. Hey, I can't wait to watch this game with you and Kirk and the rest of the crew. Can't wait. It's going to be a great game. Thanks for calling.
Chris. Yeah, we can't wait either. Should be fun.
You got it. We'll chat soon, Chris. Thanks for calling in. Here you go. That's Chris Fowler.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.